An outbreak of severe weather to bring a violent tornado threat, the threat of large hail, strong straight line winds. Later this week, that threat continues and bringing the threat of catastrophic flooding. While that's going on, we've got a winter storm on the northern side to talk about in today's video. Welcome in, everyone. Good to see you on this Wednesday, April 2nd now. I was about to say March. It is April now, and the weather's acting like it. So we are starting to get into the peak of climatological severe weather season. And yeah, we have that newly issued high risk. That's a level 5 out of 5 for severe weather from the Storm Prediction Center today. We're going to talk about that. I'll tell you my thoughts on if that is a warranted high risk. And then we'll talk about severe weather later through this week into the weekend, that flooding threat, and the potential for ongoing winter weather as well up to the north. So we'll break it all down for you in today's video. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe if you aren't already, and hit the bell for the latest notifications. Also comment, let me know where you're watching from and what you're seeing out there. It always helps me kind of gauge how well the models are handling these events. Always good to get those ground reports from you folks. With that said, let's dive right on into it and give you the latest on today's threat. We're going to start with our upper level wind map. This is our 500 millibar height map with winds in knots on there as well. And you're probably wondering, well, Gerald, why are you starting with this? Well, I'll tell you why. And it all comes down really to this little area of yellow you see on the map. And we'll take a look at the severe weather threat next up. We'll look at the map from the Storm Prediction Center. But this is what we call a jet streak in meteorology, and I talk about these pretty often on the channel. If you don't know what that is, basically it's just an area of very quick winds in the jet stream, and these often lead to areas of increased lift and or sinking motion in the atmosphere. So we can do what we call our 4-quadrant jet streak model. That's what me and all of these fancy scientists call it. Basically, we can just break this up into 4 quadrants, and I'll kind of circle them in kind of different colors here. So we'll start with green. We'll go ahead and put green right here. And then we'll do another color. I guess we can do white. White should show up pretty well. We'll put white right here. So the areas you see white, that's where we have increased lift in the environment. Basically, in those areas of the jet streak, we have upper level divergence. I talk about that all the time on the channel. That leads to rising motion at the surface, and that's conducive for enhanced severe weather. Areas of green, we have sinking motion, and that can help to kind of suppress lift in the atmosphere and help to kind of calm severe weather from time to time. So that's going to be very important today, especially this area of white you see down here. That's going to overlap with an area of very we'll say high thunderstorm fuel, and that's going to really, I think, lead to that high end risk of severe weather. Now, there are other components to the threat today that make you question why exactly we have that level 5 out of 5, maybe not a level 3 or 4 out of 5. We'll talk about that next up as well, but let's time this out for you. Today's not the only day we're going to be dealing with these upper level strong winds, and you can see as we kind of move this ahead into time, we'll get this into tomorrow afternoon, Thursday. We still have very strong winds. Also, just an area of general divergence aloft in here. Basically, you can see this massive trough dipping down into the west, and out in front of it, that's where we have this entire area of lift, and also a very sharp boundary of record warm temperatures in the southeast and cold temperatures in the Rockies. Yeah, it's that combination of warm and cold air that are kind of hitting each other here. It's going to lead to increased wind shear as well over that ribbon of the jet stream here through the central part of the country and into the Ohio Valley by tomorrow. And then by the weekend, we'll continue the same threat. All right, here's the latest from the Storm Prediction Center. Yeah, they went ahead this morning and pulled the trigger for that level 5 out of 5. This is the highest risk that they could possibly issue from Memphis all the way up the Mississippi River Valley near Blytheville, Dyersburg, Union City, including Paducah, Mayfield, into Cape Girardeau, Jonesboro. So a corridor here of a pretty high population area in that level 5 out of 5 threat. But I want you to, pay attention here. You don't have to be in that hot pink color on the map. That's almost even white. It's so pink to see severe weather today. Anywhere that's shaded in on this map could see severe weather, whether that's dark green or the yellow or the orange or the red or that pink color. You could see severe weather, and I'm going to throw a bone here to my folks locally here into the Carolinas. Also a sneaky severe weather threat here along the 85 corridor, even back down towards the Midlands of South Carolina. We'll briefly touch on that. A sneaky little tornado threat today don't lose, don't put your guard down out here as well. You're not in a threat area. It's these little setups the Storm Prediction Center often misses around here. I can tell you firsthand, trust me. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the warning here. If you're in the Charlotte area, back down towards Columbia, even maybe Greensboro and Greenville, South Carolina, just that general corridor, pay attention. Not a huge threat today, but something that I am going to break down here in today's video. Now you're looking at all this, you're seeing the high risk, and you're wondering, well, Gerald, why are they putting out a high risk? Well, it is actually a tornado-driven high risk. So they're giving it a 30% shot of a tornado, including violent tornadoes, meaning EF2s, 3s, and 4s, or maybe even stronger than that, although we've been in quite the EF5 drought recently, haven't we? We definitely don't want to speak that into existence. But, running that high threat here where we have that high risk. And then, again, anywhere in kind of this shaded area with the kind of checkered marks almost, or maybe not checkered marks, with the dashed lines from Ohio all the way down to Shreveport could see a violent tornado today. So it's a lot of folks. It's not just that high risk, and I really want to, hit that point home. You could be anywhere in this shaded area and see, that potential for a tornado. Like I said, even in and around the Charlotte area, you're not shaded in. But I'm watching a sneaky setup out this way for maybe a tornado or two to be possible. Now, it's not going to be the end of it, folks. We get into tomorrow. I mean, this is quite a big risk, isn't it? From New York City, heck, even Bridgeport, Connecticut, all the way down to almost the deserts of Texas. Yeah, I showed you that giant boundary. We've got a massive ridge in place of high pressure over the southeast. This is leading to just incredibly warm temperatures for April standards. Meanwhile, we've got cold air and a pocket of cold air up to kind of the Rockies, and it's that battleground zone in between that we have highlighted for severe weather tomorrow. That's where the cold air, the warm air are going to meet. It's going to increase our thermodynamic support. We're going to have enhanced wind shear along this kind of stalled out frontal boundary. Again, you've got winds kind of going one direction on one side of the front, the other direction on the other. That leads to increased spin and vorticity. So I think tomorrow also going to be a pretty big severe weather day, including the threat of tornadoes. I'll tell you right now, I think tomorrow's going to get bumped up a little bit. Right now, we've got a 5% chance of a tornado within a 25-mile radius. I think this will probably get bumped up at least to a 10% chance. And if they don't, then I'll tell you now, go ahead and prepare for a higher end tornado threat than what the Storm Prediction Center is showing for tomorrow, Thursday. And then guess what? By Friday, we're not done yet. Another area of severe weather potential, kind of in that same general region. And the flow is going to kind of get stuck here a little bit. So we've got that same ridge and that same trough kind of in the same areas fighting things out. That's going to lead to the same area of severe weather from DFW all the way up to Arkansas, into portions of southern Illinois, Indiana, the Boot Hill of Missouri, heck, western Kentucky and Tennessee, still in the same areas. By the way, you see, how this severe weather is overlapping the same areas almost every day. That means rainfall in the same areas, and that's why we could see catastrophic flooding that we'll go ahead and talk about next up. All right, so speaking on that flooding threat, tomorrow also a high risk, but instead of severe weather, it's for flash flooding, and really over the exact same area that we have the severe weather threat today. It's that same area from Jonesboro up to that Paducah, Mayfield region, including extreme western portions of Tennessee here. I am expecting, again, unfortunately, catastrophic flash flooding to be possible, as we're going to just get this band of rain to continue to run over the same areas. All comes back to that stationary front. I told you it's kind of stalled out over this region. So again, that pink area, that's a high-end threat of excessive rainfall that could lead to flash flooding. The red area, and same for the yellow area, you too could also see it. Would not be surprised at all to see flash flooding really anywhere shaded in on this map. But the highest risk, the one that you really need to pay attention to, is in that pink area. So if you live somewhere that's flood prone, definitely already go ahead and have that plan ready. If you need to get out quick, have a way to know that whatever body of water you're near is rising, and have that evacuation plan ready and on the go. Now, you may be wondering, well, how much rain exactly are we talking? Yeah, it's going to be a lot, folks. We're talking double-digit rainfall just now, really through the weekend or so. We've got some places here clocking in at about 12 inches, a foot of rain. Yeah, that would flood anywhere. You do it over a couple of days, and then you add the tornado threat on it and everything else. I mean, you really just can't catch a break in this region. So it's going to be a rough weekend, a rough end of this week for this area. But obviously, we're thinking about you folks, and we'll keep you updated daily here on the channel about this threat, including the tornado threat that we're going to go ahead and talk about now. All right, let's take a look at some model data for today. And I'm going to start zoomed in on that high risk region. And also, we've got a little bit of the Carolinas snuck in here too that I'll mention as well in this segment. And then we'll kind of zoom it out afterwards and look at more areas. We'll talk about the winter storm side of things. And we'll talk about the days ahead and then end out the video with snowfall totals and the temperature map, because I think that's its own story as well. So here's kind of the setup early this afternoon. We still got this leftover line of storms. It's, again, this kind of stalled out front out here. It's not quite stalled out yet. You can see right up here. This is a trough. You see how these isobars kind of just dip down? Well, that's where our front is located. So here's our cold front. Again, kind of where I just drew that trough. And out in front of it, we have that precipitation firing up. And remember, like I said, we've got that area of that jet streak that's leading to even more enhanced lift kind of over that circled area in blue. So we've got a lot of forcing factors out there today. We've got the cold front, we've got upper level jet dynamics. So it's not going to take a lot for storms to get going. Then you have to ask yourself the question, well, do we have enough convectively available potential energy or CAPE to kind of help really boost the updraft speeds of this area of lift? What's the storm mode going to be? And I think that's the key today on how today could be maybe a little bit better than it looks. For folks who obviously don't want to see a bunch of tornadoes, and we'll talk about that. Then the other thing you have to look at, obviously, is wind shear. Do we have enough wind shear to even support severe weather? And again, I think all of those are absolutely, we definitely have every ingredient except for maybe the storm mode, and potentially even CAPE could be slightly on the lower end compared to what you would normally expect for a high risk day, but I still think more than enough to cause severe weather. So we'll time it out here. Again, you remember where that kind of risk is. I think it's going to come in multiple waves today. I think the first area we really need to watch for severe weather is going to be during the kind of early afternoon time frame through Indiana, Illinois, back up into this region. You see this kind of section of the cold front that's going to get pushed east, and then everything behind it's going to kind of lag behind, and that's when we're going to get that stationary front to begin to form. So strong straight line winds, some large hail, and then embedded tornadoes in that section of the line early this afternoon. We'll take a look at a sounding here later on. Up into that region, and any little supercells that try to get going out ahead of AC, maybe here a couple of showers or maybe low-topped shallow supercells could try to get going. We'll absolutely need to watch that. And then by the evening time frame, you see that kind of skirts ahead, and that severe weather continues. And then I think it's the overnight, or really the evening into the overnight, that the severe weather threat begins to ramp up further south a little bit. Notice the storm mode today, it's very linear. And this is why I think a lot of people are maybe surprised the Storm Prediction Center pulled the risk on that level 5 out of 5, the high risk. And I understand that, definitely that's warranted. I'll also say, though, we do have some little kidney beans trying to show up here out in front of the line a little bit further north in the high risk. So, maybe Indiana, Southern Illinois, even into portions of Ohio, maybe you folks overperform today, while further south, where we actually have the high risk, could underperform. I'll also add, though, there's plenty of times we get storm mode wrong. I'd say out of all the ways that severe weather busts or the forecast ends up wrong, it's because the storm mode ends up being something different than what is predicted on the models. And basically, that all comes down to just how these outflow boundaries and how the prevailing winds interact with each other. And it's very tough to kind of navigate perfectly here on the mesoscale, in kind of just the current technology that we have. Now, keep it going. We'll pause it here. Now, this is when the threat becomes realized a little bit more. This is right around sunset. But pause again. You can kind of see the storyline back out west. But the Carolinas, you see this little area of some showers. You're probably thinking, well, what in the world, Gerald? That's not a big deal. And it very well could not be a big deal. That's why I'm not sounding the alarm, telling everyone, panic or anything. But I will say this is a pretty classic setup. We've got a retreating area of cold air damming today, so a little pocket of kind of chillier air north and along I-85, and that's all kind of running from this very warm, moist air getting advected northward. And it's very often where these two meet over the Carolinas, you just get a ton of spin, and it does not take much lift or energy to bring that spin to the surface in the form of a tornado. Again, I'm watching kind of this corridor circled in red today for maybe an isolated tornado or two, not a huge threat, and there's a chance storms don't even form. Again, it's kind of a very iffy environment. If storms form, I think we'll get a tornado or two. If they don't, or they're just kind of just little showers and they can't quite mature enough, then we'll probably be fine and it'll be like a normal day, and the fact that no one has said anything will be normal. But again, do not be surprised if maybe we get a couple brief spin of tornadoes. It's a classic kind of setup. I chase these things all the time. They often overperform. So we'll watch that in the Carolinas. But the bigger threat, obviously, is going to be back out west. All right, let's take a look at it. So again, this is right around sunset tonight. It's at this point the low-level jet begins to crank up, and also we get enough lift that out ahead of the main line, notice a couple little kidney beans trying to develop from northern Mississippi into western Tennessee and even into western Kentucky. That's where we need to watch for that high-end significant tornado threat. You can see those kind of work northward, and then I think eventually by the overnight, everything merges back together in a main line. So the highest risk of severe weather today for that tornado threat in that high-risk zone could be a pretty small time frame. It could be maybe only a couple of hours of individual discrete supercells before everything gets back into a linear form. However, the strong straight line wind threat, the embedded tornado threat, will continue into the overnight, and that goes for everyone in the threat today, from Ohio all the way down towards Shreveport. Anyone that is going to get hit by this line of storms could see, strong winds and embedded tornadoes. And we'll even watch down here to southern Arkansas, northern Louisiana. You can see some of these storms are almost a little bit more discrete in their own way as the stationary front kind of goes a little bit more east-west compared to northeast-southeast. So we'll watch that. But again, I do expect multiple tornadoes today in this high-risk zone. Is it going to be enough that it's warranted that high risk? We'll see. But either way, a big severe weather day today. Let's take a look at a couple other parameters. This is storm relative helicity. This is spin in the atmosphere. This does not take into account instability, excuse me. So you see that a ton of SRH all the way up near, almost the Chicago area. That doesn't mean you're going to see severe weather, because you could be, 45 degrees and have a ton of SRH. But some areas on this map will see a combination of both, and you can see that starting this afternoon over portions of Indiana, southern Illinois. Let me pick a color you can see here, and even into Ohio. I think we'll have enough storm fuel and wind shear down this way to see a couple tornadoes this afternoon. And I'll mention here kind of the parameters for here. Anything above about 200, so anything in orange or brighter, is when you start to get a little bit more concerned here for that potential. And notice how we have this SRH down into the Carolinas along that boundary I told you about. Again, that's another thing I'm watching. Now, further south in the high risk, you're thinking, all right, well, there's not really a lot going on. Why do we have this threat? Well, watch what happens right here. As the evening goes through, that low-level jet immediately cranks up with that nocturnal change, and we begin to see a ton of storm relative helicity build back into that high-risk zone. You can see cracking 300, 400, and this is in the lowest levels. So down here, you probably need even less spin. This is, maybe 150 would be enough to get a tornado going. You start seeing this fine line of 200 to 300 SRH. So we're going to have the wind shear. Also notice how it picks up over the Carolinas, Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte. Yeah, we're running storm relative helicity values, in that 1 to 300 range. That's enough to produce a tornado in that region of the 85 corridor. So don't sleep on that region as well. Now keep it going. You can see storm relative helicity continues into the overnight. So even if we don't get anything during the daylight hours, nocturnal tornado threat through Tennessee, Kentucky, down to Mississippi, even into the Shreveport area, southern Arkansas, Texas. You can see plenty of spin, and you put this all together to get our significant tornado parameter map, and you'll notice that it's pretty high today. So you can see that big ingredients starting really early this afternoon. Again, I think it's going to come in waves. First wave, likely Indiana, Illinois, maybe even into the Boot Hill of Missouri. And then you get that second wave of tornadic energy this evening, closer to the high risk. But like I said, even spreads down into Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. So do not let your guard down anywhere in the severe weather risk for today. Now let's go ahead and kind of take a look at a couple of soundings. If you're regular on the channel, you'll kind of know this process. If not, I'll try to briefly explain it. We'll start up here into Indiana and Illinois. And that area of potential severe weather. Now, I think the reason that we don't have a high risk up here or even a moderate risk for parts of this area, it comes down to those jet streak dynamics. I told you, the further north, we're kind of in sinking motion aloft, so that could help to suppress some of these storms. While further south, closer to Memphis, we have more rising motion that could maybe lead to more of a tornadic threat. You can kind of even see that in the hodograph. We've got a little bit of a cap in place here. That's that red line. See how it kind of starts going a little more vertical and even juts to the right a little bit. That's something right into here storms are going to have to overcome. So they're probably going to start to rise, and then they're going to hit an area of slightly less energy, so they're not going to quite rise as quickly. And that could inhibit some of that tornadic potential today. But the hodograph, the wind shear off the chart, storm relative helicity values 400 to 500. Again, you need about 200 for a pretty solid tornado threat. You go anything above that, it's not good. Start hitting 400 or 500, that's a big problem. And because that are significant tornado parameter values in that 5 range or so, so our supercell composite is up past 20. That's, again, really off the chart stuff. So, in the further north section today, I think the thermodynamics are kind of the question. Are we going to have enough CAPE? Are we going to have enough lift in the atmosphere to get these things kind of to become deep supercells? Or are they going to remain kind of shallow and maybe struggle to hit their peak intensity? But even if they remain shallow, could still have that tornado threat with just so much wind shear in the atmosphere up that way. Let's move it south now and go down to this area where we have the high risk. Now, same thing, honestly, it's pretty similar look here. The only difference is in the upper levels, we have more support for lift. I think that's what kind of drove the SPC to get that high risk going. I mean, thermodynamically, it looks about identical. Hodograph-wise, it's about identical. Off the chart wind shear, mediocre to okay thermodynamics here with CAPE values, about 1,000 to 2,000. That's okay. But again, the lapse rates here, we've got multiple little capping inversions in it. And I think the question is, if that cap can break in places, then we'll get that discrete supercell threat out ahead of things, and that's when the high risk could definitely happen and become one that verifies. But if that cap holds and we just have that line, that quasi-linear system all day, this probably could have stayed a moderate risk, although still a big risk. So Storm Prediction Center betting that jet streak's going to do its job and get the lift over here. It's a fair bet to make. You know, it happens often, but we'll definitely see how that ends up playing out across this region. All right, let's zoom things out here. Again, we've got a winter storm side of this. We've got other areas of severe weather, not only today, but for the days ahead. So let's kind of move this ahead into time. Now, I think we could even see a severe weather risk as far north as southern Michigan and Wisconsin here. The threat area up this way going to be more localized, not going to be quite as much of maybe outbreak potential as we could see further south, but still could see strong storms, heavy rain at the very least through the southern half of Michigan. And then you notice, obviously, the elephant in the room here is this massive winter storm from the Dakotas up into Minnesota, a foot plus of snow on the way for the Arrowhead of Minnesota. We'll take a look at those snowfall maps here in a moment. Keep it going, though, through this evening. We kind of talked up to this point on severe weather. We'll go through the overnight hours. Like I said, this becomes more of a linear setup. And we'll actually even pause it right here because I do want to mention this. This is this evening about 9 p.m. Eastern, again, time above my head there. You can see this kind of tongue of snow beginning to now work into the northeast, at least the interior northeast. Heavy rain into New York State, then heavy snow up into the Adirondacks, Vermont, New Hampshire, an icy, snowy mess up into Maine. Through the overnight of tonight, you could just see kind of a brutal winter storm there with a mix of sleet, snow, freezing rain. It's going to start as snow for most of us, and then that warm front lifts northward, and with it, changing over to all rain for much of New York, Vermont, southern New Hampshire, still holding on to a winter storm into the state of Maine itself, including even kind of the down east areas further north up the coastline, could see some of that wintry weather. This is tomorrow morning. We get to tomorrow afternoon, another severe weather risk, like I mentioned. And also notice, see how some of this rain just works over some of the same areas. I mean, that's concerning for the flooding threat right into here, again, that we talked about. Same area, could see tornadoes again tomorrow. We've got a lot of wind shear. Like I said, we've got kind of this stalled out boundary in here. Anytime you get a boundary, that's going to help to enhance wind shear. So we'll need to watch that. I think the good news, CAPE should be a little bit lower tomorrow for folks up into Kentucky and Tennessee. The reason for that, though, is because it's going to be raining all day. So your question, is it even worth, having lower CAPE to have the flooding threat? Probably not. Further south, though, into the Arklatex area, Texarkana, Shreveport, southern Arkansas, back into DFW. I think more CAPE, just enough wind shear, could see a higher tornado threat down that way tomorrow on Thursday. And then you can see by tomorrow afternoon, some of these storms just continue to ride that same boundary, bringing that severe weather threat. This gets us to Friday morning, more of the same rounds of rain. And then by Friday afternoon, we're going to get another injection of energy in the atmosphere back out towards the southern plains, Oklahoma, Texas, the Boot Hill of Missouri, the Arklatex could see severe weather, and then the Ozarks as well here up through the Ohio River Valley by Friday afternoon. Another day of potential severe weather out into this region as that next kind of storm system gets going. All right, let's take a look at a couple parameters for this time frame. This is our significant tornado parameter. So again, the brighter the color, the higher the ingredients are for tornadoes, including potentially even strong tornadoes. Now we'll start for tomorrow because we already looked at today. Here's tomorrow afternoon. Like I said, further south towards Texas, notice these ingredients really begin to ramp up tomorrow into Shreveport, Dallas, Fort Worth, maybe even as far south as Austin and the Houston metro area. I mean, we've got values quite high, getting near 4 or 5. On the southern side of that boundary, that's where we have the instability and still ample wind shear for tornadic activity on Thursday. We go into Friday. You'll notice right here is Friday afternoon, more the same, kind of the same region, seeing that tornado threat back down into Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Now let's go ahead and kind of move this ahead towards the weekend. I think this is when things really begin to ramp up once again. I think Thursday, Friday, tornado threat, definitely severe weather threat, but we're going to get a little bit of a lull before things once again go downhill. Here's why. Another area of energy. Here's Friday afternoon, just this huge bowling ball looking trough out here. And I always say this on the channel. When you start seeing circles on the vorticity map, it's never a good sign. That's a lot of lift in the atmosphere. By Friday, you can see we have this entire area of divergence out in front of this big bowling ball piece of energy. That's going to lead to a lot of lift and severe weather potential by Friday. And then we get to the weekend. I'm going to pause it right here on Saturday. I think this is a day that could be quite rough. Saturday, right into this region, we've got just a lot of lift in the atmosphere. You're right next to the Gulf, so you're going to have a transport of moist air out of the south. Saturday could be a big day in that black circle on your map. Including overnight, we could have a nocturnal threat. And then we get into Sunday here. Things calm down maybe a little bit, but we could still see some of that energy try to push east towards Georgia, Alabama, the Carolinas by Sunday afternoon, and could see a severe weather threat then. And then by next week, we finally calm down. You see this big piece of energy up here? You're thinking, all right, well, that could be problematic. That's actually a pocket of cold air and stable air, not so much unstable air like we were seeing this week. And we'll talk about that here in just a moment. Let's kind of add all this up. Severe weather ingredients from our European ensembles. We'll start this back on Friday afternoon. Here you go. You can see that ingredient parameters beginning to increase. Dallas, Fort Worth, Little Rock, surrounding areas, even up into potentially the Ohio Valley once again by Friday. Then we get to Saturday, another area of severe weather, pretty high ingredients here. Euro's saying we've already got about a 70 to 80% shot that we're going to get strong storms in this region, passing that severe criteria into southern Arkansas, down through Louisiana, through Mississippi. So maybe a little bit more of a Dixie Alley type day on Saturday into the evening of Saturday. And then by Sunday here, lower ingredients, but still could see a little bit of severe weather back down towards Alabama, Georgia, maybe even the Carolinas. Try to get in on some of the action by then. You can see even some that tries to work to the coast. Maybe Monday we get a little bit more severe weather. And then by next Tuesday, everything begins to work offshore. All right, final thing to talk about is those snowfall totals and the temperatures, both the big story. Up here to the north, Fargo to Duluth, I mean, we're going to see half a foot plus of snow in this region. I think really the biggest winter is going to be up here towards Hibbing, Ely, International Falls, Two Harbors. This corridor in here of northern Minnesota up towards the Arrowhead could see a double-digit snowfall out of this system. Total. Now, you may have already gotten a couple of inches depending on when you're watching this, so subtract that from some of these numbers you see, but a good amount of snow on the way up this way. And then if we kind of zoom out a little bit and we go to the northeast, we're going to see snow into this region as well, especially up into Maine, kind of the northern Maine here, into this darker shaded region. Could see 2 to 5 inches of snowfall the further south and east you go, or south and west rather, towards New Hampshire and Vermont. Going to see some winter weather, more of an icy mix in this part of Vermont and New Hampshire. Some of those areas that hold on to the cold air the longest could see 1/4 of an inch of ice. We're going to see some sleet. We're going to see snow, just kind of a wintry mixed bag of mess you don't want to see in April. But unfortunately, that's exactly what's on the way for this region. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the final thing here. That's temperatures. This is its own story in its own way. Today, this afternoon, we're already shooting up to, very, high-end temperatures here in the red. We're talking 20 degrees above what we should be this time of year into Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, all the way back down towards the Gulf, out in that warm sector. And things are going to go from warm to even warmer by tomorrow. Check out tomorrow afternoon. We've got temperatures, again, 15 to 20 degrees above what they should be through much of the eastern half of the country. We're getting to the first week of April, so your high temperatures are already starting to get up into the 70s, so you add 15, 20 degrees on that. Some people could crack almost 90 here by the time we get to Friday afternoon. Check it out into the southeast. I mean, yeah, it's going to be a very warm day in the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, anywhere left in that warm sector south of that boundary that sets up. And then you can see by the weekend, that boundary really amplifies even more. Here's Saturday. Check this out. So in West Virginia, we're going to be nearly 25 degrees above average, while portions of Texas and New Mexico could be 40 degrees below average. That's just an insane temperature gradient here. A tale of multiple stories here in the weather, depending on where you're watching from by the weekend. And then I think by next week, here comes that cooler pocket of air out of the north. And yeah, by next Tuesday to Wednesday, we're going to be back in more of a early spring to winter-like pattern. Temperatures nearly 20 degrees below what they should be this time of year. Alrighty, folks, that's all I got for you. Again, I know this was a long video, but just so much information to get out, a lot to talk about, and a lot to discuss with this active pattern. All right, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, and I'll see you all next time.